Ti delimo ovaj.
There's been a bit of change of plans. There's not only two panelists, but three plus the moderator. So we have Marko Jevremovic, who is not from App Software, but he is a data scientist in gaming. Then you already met Nikola Damjanov and Milan Licina, and the moderator will be Ralja Bobic, the program director from the Serbian Games Association. And this panel will tackle the question if generative AI can be infused into gaming. So let's try to answer it together.
Thank you, Tanya. Thanks everyone for being here. So we're going to try to use the next half an hour or 45 minutes to chat a bit about different topics in relation to AI in gaming. Generative AI included, of course, and it's very nice to have kind of people coming from different backgrounds. From on one hand, let's say more the technical data side, and then more the creative side. And what we want to explore, of course, are the intersection.
I'm
creative data
too, man.
So what we were talking a bit about was, maybe to start it off, was the fact that some of the technologies that are now kind of showcased as something very new and emerging, and all being in this kind of cloud of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Some of these technologies have been used within the realm of gaming for quite some time, and also some of the concepts that were presented over the last years as something entirely new and futuristic, such as metaverse and so on. And you can find a lot of the kind of early forms of this in the domain of games, or whether we mention Second Life or even just massive multiplayer games. So maybe for the start, just to what would be your view on that as people who have been for a while involved in the production of games and in this field in general? I don't know who wants to start maybe first. Marko, you didn't have a chance to speak today yet.
Do you want the mic or can I start? I'll start from artistic standpoint, and I'll hand it over to you for the more creative standpoint. Okay, and I also would just add that since this is a panel, that people can like interject with questions at any point.
You don't have to wait for the end.
So please shout any questions, or even better, shout disagreements, so then we can sort it out here while we talk. The question of generative AI and can it be infused with gaming as a general topic, I think like the question is probably a couple of decades too late, because it already has happened on different scale. And somebody who comes from creating content from games, well, we've been using that for a very long time now in different capacities. We've been using generative AI to create textures for the last 5 years. We've been using to actually populate environments for the last 5. We've been using that for actually creating like full-blown games for the last maybe 2 or 3 years. But now we're just kind of seeing the hype, and even though the hype is probably like super real and maybe even scary for like a regular Joe, from people in the industry, we are not that, I wouldn't say impressed, but we're not that shaken by it, because we have been using these kind of tools for a very long time.
Thank you. What should I add now? That was the panel. Cool. So anyway, I have two people here from creative people. Like they're gonna be on the light side. Like art will save the world, and I'm the scary guy who says data will eat the world. Let's make it like that. Yeah, so I think first of all, like when we talk about generative AI, there's great definition of what AI is, and it's always something that's on the edge of what we can do right now. So I always mention that, like, damn, it's almost 30 years ago. I played chess on Commodore, and it was AI. full-blown AI at that moment. So it was a thinking machine. It was a big deal. But right now, like, no one thinks about that when they think about AI. So as Nikola said, a lot of stuff has been happening in the industry for past decade or so. But the big question is, what can we do with the latest, brightest, most shiny technology at this moment? And that has its own set of answers. So a lot of people are thinking, how to integrate large language models into games, how to automate some production. So AAA games are the prime suspects for integrating some technology to automate their production, because they're so much content heavy, and it costs a lot of money, like amazing amount of money, like the most expensive Hollywood movies, and they want to cut the cost basically. So it's actually nothing glamorous. They want to cut the costs by replacing a lot of manual work with those thinking machines. So that's interesting, venue to explore.
Maybe I just wanted to add to this point. Would you say that the motivation for using kind of a new, let's say, fancy technology is always starting in cost efficiency, and then companies will say, well, we are enhancing experiences and so on, or there are different approaches to this?
Well, the wide adoption of any technology is always motivated by that. Yeah. So when big companies start to use something that's cost efficient, I mean that's inevitable. Like if you have two ways to do something and one is much cheaper than the other, I mean, we all know what's gonna happen on the market and what's gonna populate. But it's usually not like that. So people who are creative, who are interested in some new tools to help them do something that no one did before, they're the first ones in that. So that's always interesting. Some of them are kind of prophets of what's going to happen.
Okay. Thanks, Milan.
Thank you. So on a light grayish side, just to put on a gradient on our talk, like coming from industry that heavily relies on immersive experiences, like as I said, we are offering an experience. So the way where we can utilize generative AI or AI-powered tools is maybe to try to amplify that immersion. Like how many times we're playing video game, you have an NPC that we're always aware that it is an NPC. When something falls, or you have unintentional steps in the game, the environment does not react to that scenario. It just happened as let's say, something unpredicted. And if we have a system that learns and reacts to happy accidents, to any sort of an unpredicted behavior, then we can have a full immersion. And where it started to happen and where we can utilize that sort of thing is perhaps with speech synthesis. Like these language models that you mentioned, if we can use it to immerse ourselves with our speech, with the game and the system, it becomes more personal. It becomes more real experience to all of us, and it maybe resonates better. Because if you can generate response from NPC that has character, it adds its character. By far, by analyzing NPC, we are always aware that it's artificial. And when we utilize these tools and present them as actors, like we are all in our roles playing game or having some immersion, and if we are both actors and not like passive observers of the NPC system that is in the game, it will be awesome. Because we already have those models interpreted in some games, like AVP has this learning where your opponent is learning how you are avoiding attacks, how you are planning by using reinforced learning. Why cannot we, not why cannot, but that great future is actually trying to make the game more aware of the player and not the player versus game. So maybe that's one way to look at it.
I have a replic. So one of the big challenges for that is, and now I'm kind of playing the advocate against AI, but it's just a big a big risk. So the part of the experience in the games is that they are a system that you can know. So it's an ordered system, more or less, within which you're playing. So I have really small kids, and when they're too small, they cannot play because they cannot establish rules. And then once they start establishing rules, then they can play in the group, for instance. And one of the problems with current cutting-edge technology is that it's not controllable. So it can go whatever. You can play with ChatGPT, and it can just go into some tangents worse than I do when I speak about something, and that can be a problem for the game. So a big challenge for integrating these technologies will be actually controllability, because you want to stay within some kind of scenario, but offer more immersion, and that's not something that's guaranteed by the way how the technology works.
Thanks. Let's say the next field I'd like to kind of poke a bit is the question of the tools. So I guess a number of years ago, for designers, it would be a pretty big challenge to deal with any sort of like coding, building their own tools and so on. And this has really changed over the years, and now there's a multitude of tools, and a lot of them are also free, or they're affordable, and they are getting easier and easier to use. So yeah, what would be your take on that, and how was it eventually, for example, for you guys as designers, getting into using a bit more complex tools or working with code as such to start with?
May I start? Thanks.
Yeah, that's up your alley. Feel free to start.
Yeah. So I tend to make this analogy not because I think high of myself. I think highly, but not that much. But in Renaissance you had Da Vinci, which also had to be his own technologist, his own material maker, and also painter. Like, he didn't have a shop to go and buy his pigments to create an image. So in order to be an effective artist and to control your process, because we were speaking about controllability, you need to be able to control your process. So in a way, if you have technical challenges, because you have challenge and expense, not a problem. So everything you can solve by money, you can buy. Is it knowledge? Is it people who know it? Or is it a challenge? How much do you want to integrate it into your pipeline? So in this way, if you have technical challenges, you will spend some time with out-of-the-box solutions. And by that time, you will be creating and dealing under the boundaries of the tool that you selected. Once you want to overcome the box that you are creating, you will start learning. Is it coding? Is it way of thinking? Because we are always coding. Like, for me, I can say it like that because it is situation analysis. We are coding our coffee making. We are coding our expenses. We are coding how much money are we spending in the store every day. So if you set yourself goals and you are able to think in a way of a state machine, like do this, and do this, you can start small. The main problem is actually this tutorial hell for everyone, because it is shown that you can build your own GPT in 7 minutes of a YouTube video. Of course, you cannot do it in 7 minutes, because preparation for that video lasted months in order to, compress it and show it in an understandable way. So as an artist, by starting like small, taking baby steps, you can go in the technical side of things in order to control your process. And if you don't have any time to do that and want to be focused on the creative side, then you also need to understand the limits of the tools that you're using. Because now everyone knows about Midjourney, and the client goes and says, yeah, we can use Midjourney to create full-on AI video. You know, we cannot. But they have paid their 30 euros for Midjourney, and they expect for it to spit out the video. It cannot happen. So as a producer, as a manager, as a creative director, you also need to be involved in the technical abilities of the tools that your team is using, so you cannot accept to do a project which cannot fulfill, because there you need to work on, I mentioned it before, Kyber or some other tool, or to count on the working hours of your motion graphics team. So in a way, just know the limits of the tools before you start to advance yourself and find knowledge in different areas of expertise, because it's all creative, not just like doing data programming and so on. Like, it's a problem solving, and it is a creative skill.
Maybe Marko, I don't know if you want to add, as a, I guess, person who is working on building some of these tools that others are using.
Yeah, follow Da Vinci.
Maybe Michelangelo.
No. This is out of my scope. I played with some other stuff, but like tools for these guys, they better talk about that.
No, okay. I just meant from the, you know, they are on, let's say, one side as people who are using these tools, and maybe you're not creating tools that they are using, but you're creating some pieces of technology that are used maybe in some other parts of the process of, you know, creating, producing, or managing game projects. I mean, in the context of AI, but if I
yeah, but maybe for the, you know, follow the thread. Maybe Nikola can give his experience, and then I can kind of switch a bit to something else.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure, I can. To kind of piggyback on what you started about knowing the limits and everything. I mean, tools are always going to be just that, tools, and especially now, I think with that we are in the zone of kind of democratizing this generative AI hype. Sadly, the focus is not that much on usability currently, and I think that's completely fine at this point. That will come, and even the tools that you kind of find, which have kind of a more of a like easier learning curve, they usually kind of spit out more limited results because it's very hard to control this beast, this machine. It's still very, very black boxy, which I personally have a way bigger problem with. I've been talking to a lot of like other my peers who've been working like in AAA gaming industry, and like, of course they've all dabbled with producing content and assets using generative AI on multiple scales. And the higher level you go, it's more difficult and more useless. Because like you think that it's going to replace all the artists, not anytime soon, that's for sure. Because when you're building very specific and very unique products, you have very specific visions, very specific art directions. It's very hard to get very specific, and then it's even harder to get very specific, consistent results from the. And I don't know if this is like solely related to tools, to the like all the levers you're kind of exposed to as an end user. Or is this like an inherited limitation of the model itself? Probably a mixture of both. But we'll see both of those limitations progress over time. That's for sure.
Caravaggio, yes. Yeah. So I don't know. I was playing more with kind of building some things that are unseen in games. Which are also kind of these AI tools, and this is actually a very large area where you know AI as such, or whatever models that we are actually talking about, can be applied to. So a lot of the stuff I personally worked on a game was in domain of like bots, matchmaking, you know, difficulty control, which is kind of, you know, personalized experience for users, which is a more fancy way to put it. And these are all the things that no one sees, unlike the stuff that's in front of their face. But it influences a lot their experience. I've even measured it, so we know that it's like, what are the numbers for that? So it's also very interesting a set of tools basically, which are you then putting in the game with its own set of levers, what you can set there, what you can change, and then you figure out that you now have some new levers to control the experience and overall feel of the game. Great stuff, and I think that a lot should be yet to be explored in that direction, because more and more people are playing games, and then the limits of a genre are kind of dissipating very fast. Once you start looking into who's playing what, so people easily get into a game, and then you should keep them there, and I think that's especially important for mobile games where retention is very, very important. But also for traditional console games, you kind of want to build your brand, and then people will buy something else that you create, that you put on the market tomorrow. And in that sense, this personalized experience is something that can make, I think, really huge difference for games, because you want someone who's veteran in the genre to have adequate challenge when they get into your game, but you also want some noob who wants to kill a bit of time to also have the adequate challenge in your game. And adequate challenge means they're both going to have fun, and if it's flipped, one is going to be super frustrated and the other will be extremely bored. And in that area, I played a bit, and there's so much space in literally every game. When I start playing it, I kind of as soon as I hit some frustrating moment, now I have this light bulb that says like, fuck, they could have done this kind of dynamically to figure out that for me it needs to be a bit different.
Go ahead.
Because you touched on a topic which I think is interesting, that's like personalization. Because now with we always had desire to like localize, personalize things, and now with this ability to create content en masse, we are getting like there for, so we did actually potentially very soon create highly personalized experiences for people. But I'm curious, like both of you, like where do you feel that balance should be, and then like also where do you feel that balance will end up being? In a sense, like for example, when you're using AI to tune game difficulty, we are actually like customizing already pre-directed experience, but we're not that far from actually creating a completely new experience for every person. Do you think that's a good thing?
Yeah. So to expand on that, maybe the creating a highly personalized experience, like at this point, is still like in a gray area. But where can we improve some experience to anyone is maybe after the game is released, like maybe going through reviews of the game with useful content, scraping those, analyzing, and seeing why do we have this drop of players because of this and that, or summing the comments about difficulties, the challenges, or overall gameplay. I'm not talking about bugs. I'm talking about overall experience where you have productive and useful comments which can be used to leverage the playing space. Like instead of in-game, it can become out of the players. So you can improve it, and then down the line, using those data, you can maybe create experience where you will, at the end of the experience or at the end of the main gameplay loop, you can actually chat with your player about their experience and rearrange the state machines and rearrange the core gameplay loop to make the parts of the game more challenging in the next playthrough. Because in the end, we don't want players just to go once through our play loop.
I just want to mention that Nikola was speaking yesterday, a whole lecture on this topic, and I guess it was recorded, so soon it will be also available online for those who missed it. No, it was Nikola from Method Games. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, on my side, I can go back to controllability issue, which is something you've seen in these tools as well. There's a very mathematical problem with these tools, and that's, for instance, in Midjourney, you have some state space of what it can produce. So if you imagine it, there's like, I don't know, some insane number of different images that it can, spew out. And then we are interested in a tiny fraction of that. So the stuff that is mapped through, language interface to underlying, let's say, engine that generates the images is something that can create all these images, but we are not interested in them. And they're like insane, uncomprehendable images, and that's basically the big risk of just letting an AI to do whatever it wants. Sooner or later, it must end up in one of these areas, and again, game is something that if it's whatever up front, then it's nothing. It's not a concrete game. So using these tools to control some predefined experience is the way to go, and it's something that still can be huge thing, but it must be kind of contained in some way. A bonus, you can actually use ChatGPT to create old school adventure games, text adventure games. I haven't tried it now with DALL-E integration. It can maybe even generate the image of the room. I don't know if everyone knows how it looked like. So basically you have some image and then a description, you're in a room which kind of contains whatever, a door, a cupboard, and and then you can type open cupboard, and then it says like, oh, you see this and this inside, and you can do it with like 2-paragraph input in ChatGPT. It doesn't have any structure. I tried to add some structure to it. It kind of can be done, but then it's simply not interesting because it's not leading you anywhere to a specific goal. Very crude. It's not something that you should, make general impression upon, but it's still fun. It behaves completely like that. It kind of, responds to whatever you do, and you can play with it. I really recommend it. I think you can just Google it, and there's how this prompt looks like.
And you mentioned you were working with data, kind of feedback data from the players in this kind of customized experience context. So can you share some, let's say, findings with us in terms of like if the player knows that each other player's experience is kind of varied, or for some even completely different than theirs? Does it influence their, let's say, attitude towards the game or motivation and so on? Because when you have kind of a competitive thing, you always think it's a fixed path that everybody kind of needs to take.
It's a huge topic. I'm going to try to cut it. So we didn't have much because it was kind of mix of PvP and playing against these bots, which are kind of like classic environment. But we managed to separate that. One of the big requirements for bots was to kind of pass this sort of like Turing test, but for a game where players playing against whatever this other player shouldn't figure out that it's a bot. They should think that they're playing against human, because then, which is very interesting, their emotions are much different. So the amplitude of emotions is higher. So if they know they're playing against a bot, winning against bot is not so satisfying. Losing against bot is still like not good experience. But winning against a human player is much more satisfying. Okay, so if you can give them a bot and they don't figure out that it's a bot, then you can kind of start playing with this experience and make them feel nice by playing the game, which is the end goal of every game. And for that we had to build like a full scale of bots. Some who play worse, some who are for our top players, and then figure out who needs to get which one. We kind of solved that, but then we had this problem of how to make them more human-like, and the place where they figured out it's a bot is when they start making mistakes. Okay, and we deliberately dumbed down these bots to make mistakes. So behind the scenes, there's some, basically math, and there's this utility function based on which one they figure out, which move to make in some specific time. And what they have is a list of moves with different utilities, and then if you want the best bot, it should always do the best thing for itself. But then what we kind of figured out at one point is that even when humans make mistakes, if you look at the actions that bots have available, and then you look at the kind of same utility, and just based on that decide what the bot will do, they do some things which humans never do. It's kind of qualitatively different, and that's the point where our idea kind of started breaking. But that's also the reason why there's so much why people don't trust AI as much, because it's gonna make mistakes in a way which is not predictable to humans. You can imagine that any AI system, like the ones for autonomous driving of cars or whatever, they're like a dumbed down version of some ideal system, and then it's making some mistakes, but in the space where it thinks, the actions it's going to make that lead to mistakes lead to completely different stuff from what humans do. Okay, and you can see that from what Tesla self-driving cars did. Just like crazy things.
Yeah, if I just might expand on this, it really is depending on the type of experience that you're delivering. For example, like trying to predict how your bots will behave largely relies on the context, like where we are. We can make a fictional scenario what they do. For example, I did many projects for VR, which includes like fictional futures, like life on Mars in 100 years, and you need to have pedestrians. You need to have some sort of fake life on your streets, and it is all based on the assumptions how would everyday life look in 100 years. So we are, in a way, we can use some sort of predictability to find a funny way, interesting new way, like bot that is playing or behaving in a way that I'm behaving now, and I'm presenting him or her 100 years in the future. That was for me the main challenge, like how to do animation learning of those animations, how to create those state machines. Like, it's not, are they driving a flying car? It is assumption for fifth element. But how do they walk a dog? How they communicate in the cities? Like, they're not having a cell phone. They're not having some funky device on their arm. They're not conversating in a way that we are conversating right now. So even if we do the technical part right, where they're behaving correctly, they're still unconvincible because they look outdated. So in that way, like dealing with context is largely part of that immersive project of generative AI, where you mostly rely on generative practices. Like, this is the way where maybe with all the probabilities you're working in variations, you can come in with some sort of conclusion.
No conclusion. I just thought it's interesting how you mentioned how people actually recognize that the error that the player it's not human error, it's like a machine error, and it feels uncanny. It's like, I don't know how to even label that, like a completely opposite level of uncanny. Yeah, it is. And I'm thinking about, like, with all the generative AI on an image level, how that, like, directly, at least to me, in my experience, translates to that. It's literally the same problem, because the more I look at generative AI images, the more I miss the human error part of actually creating that image. And the more I look at them, especially now after the hype is kind of gone, and you can, like, even, like, look at all the stuff that's coming out.
All the hands.
The hands, yeah. That's, like, really, really not a human error. Because, like, one of the first things that you learn to paint is a human error, literally hands. So yeah, that was strange, but like, we're over that hurdle for now, at least for human anatomy. But yeah, it's kind of it is kind of funny how maybe it ends up, maybe not it's the point of focus, but it's even like more difficult to simulate the like artificial stupidity than artificial intelligence in a sense.
We like our stupidity.
Yeah, we are actually proud of it, right?
We're very attached to it.
I mean, stupidity got us here as well, like evolutionary, right? So.
We're not bad.
Yeah, I just thought it was a funny observation. How are we on time? I have no idea.
I just wanted to invite the floor for questions from the audience. Yeah? I thought I saw one hint. Nikola.
Yeah, the usual suspect, again, me. As we can see, there are a lot of, almost infinite ways how generative AI can be implemented in video games, about bot difficulty, about how NPCs act, and we talk about immersiveness. I just want to, again, stress out how much it resonates with me, something that Marko said, that games are basically a controlled experience. So we want to deliver a streamlined experience, and by introducing random elements, we actually dilute that experience. We lose control, and this is not maybe something that players want. Also, I sometimes feel that, especially on the developing side, people are kind of enamored by these new technologies, and for me, it seems that there is a risk of losing sight that game development should be player-centric and not technology-centric and driven. And we talk about more immersiveness, but are we sure that players want more immersiveness? Do we know where this border is, where the limitation is? Do I really want my game to be immersive as real life, when I play my game to kind of, escape from real life? Are we aware of that, when we're doing it? What's your stance on that?
Okay, yeah, so I started with this whole player-centric and modular system, so let's take my stance on that, joking, of course. I was not maybe clear enough about being player-centric or having a fully modular system, because it's something that we cannot support in any way right now, but more in a way, if I can like do a practical example. It is something that I was thinking most, and Nikola reminded me this morning when speaking about Stray. Like, I believe that most of you are at least familiar with the game. So one of the many comments was, I cannot jump as a cat. I jump only in a way where I can. Okay, if I cannot jump, that's just a functionality that many players were commenting. But in a way, there is this, the game was out 3 years ago, so no spoilers. I would just speak about it. So in a way, you have this really cool side quest, where you are collecting a sheet music for a robot. And after, when you collected that sheet music for the robot, for me, like, very cool added value to that game would be that you because the whole plot is that that robot cannot play songs because it has no songs to learn. And once you provided enough music for that robot to learn, it is a very logical step to leave it learning new music every time you approach it. So in a way, it is a very romantic and tragic at the same time to have music at the end of the world for no one to listen to. And it gets in its loop to create a very cool experience. So I'm not talking about really like core gameplay loops that can be changed with the AI, but some would call it Easter egg, but I would call it added value of your effort for doing side quests. Like, because you haven't played against the game, you didn't interrupt the system, but every system is evolving, and you have like game systems that can be expanded like every cell or every system. So by starting small, what I was talking about in the first, like if we can expand and add value to the side quest that player was not obliged to do, but accepted to do, there is where AI can step in just to fulfill some story gaps or to gain some more perspective of why have we done some steps. So that's
Thanks.
it.
I can continue. In terms of this immersiveness, many people think about the famed metaverse, which is something I still don't fully figure out what actually is. Kind of Second Life on steroids. So a funny thing about that is that the worst thing it can do is be super successful, because like in Hitchhiker's Guide to Galaxy, you know, a perfect simulation of the universe is another universe, which is exactly the same. So if you make a game that is so immersive that it kind of copies the life, then it's just, you know, you can go out and that's it. You know, you don't need any technology. Fun. So, okay, obviously you can do some things which maybe you cannot in real life, but then you're still in a gray zone. But the other way how people can get immersed is through this, personalization. And, there's this concept in game design, the flow, when people are so into the game in terms of, they're challenged, but just enough, etc. And then they kind of lose track of time and all of that. That's great stuff. That's the main reason why people play games, to feel something like that. And there's great opportunity to use all this technology to help us make more games like that. That would be awesome. I, as a player, would love to see that.
Yeah. Any other questions, or should I add to this topic? Okay, add. Oh, no hand. Okay. What can I do value add to this topic? Let's see. So my impression on this, I do agree with your notion that currently discussion is a bit more tech-centric, but I think it's just like the afterfall of the hype that we're witnessing. But what I think it's cool that all this new tech, once it kind of inevitably fails in a certain way, it will like focus us back to the player-centric discussions. And yes, of course, definitely. And then something new will come, disrupt, and then like we'll be in the circle probably forever until we realize we're actually living in a simulation. Yes, I do agree that the player-centric notion is way more important, but I also think that all these new technologies kind of enabling us to get to that discussion maybe faster or iterate in that discussion a lot faster as well. And where my personal sensibility is, whether on the like immersibility levels, I'm really like against full-blown like capital level immersion, or however you wanna call it. I don't think that's the way to go. I believe in the works of. I believe that when somebody creates an experience, whether or not it's a movie or is a book or a piece of art or whatnot, I think there's a specific goal always behind that, whether or not it counts for a person or a team. And I think that goal should always be experienced in the way it was intended to be experienced, and not let everything, all the rules, all the rebuilding, everything like up to the player, because then to me, what's the point?
Thank you, Nikola. I think we are, okay to stop here and to stay on time. And I think it was a very eventually well-rounded up discussion. And thanks a lot for joining us. And enjoy the lunch and see you after the break.
Thank you.